As with most things, it's going to be a lot easier to talk about some of these abstract concepts if we have a specific application to work with and a little code to write. So in this video, I'm simply going to walk you through this very simple, rudimentary loan application that we can use to develop our validation techniques. So I'm going to start us off with a little high-level architecture diagram of this application, which I'm calling the loan system. So as you can see, the loan system has its data saved in a SQL database. That's tier 1, the data tier. Now the next tier is a DLL called loansystemlib.dll, and this is the C# library that encapsulates the business logic of our loan system. Then we have two user interfaces. One, we have our loan system CLI, which is a command line interface that you can use to interact with the loan system library and read and write data down to the SQL database. And we also have a website, loansystem.com, which is maybe a customer-facing portal or something like that. And it gets its data from this C# ASP.NET web service called the Loan System Web Service. Now, for this tutorial, I don't actually have to build loansystem.com. As you'll see, I've got Loan System Web Service so that we can test it directly. So those are the main pieces. You've got the CLI, the web service, the library, and the SQL database. So now let's look at a little bit of code. I've got all of this in a Visual Studio solution, and you can see these pieces. The first project in the solution is the loan system CLI. And if you open that up, it just has this one file, the program.cs. The next project is the loan system lib, which is that DLL. And you can see it's got a customer object, which we'll look at in a moment, and a loan object. And I've also stored the SQL script, which initializes the database in this project. And last, we have our loan system web service. And this is a controller-based ASP.NET web service. And if you look in the controllers, you can see there's a customer controller and a loan controller. So let's just look around in this code, and you're going to see this is shockingly simple. So let's look at customer.cs. I've got a little class here called the customer DTO. DTO stands for data transfer object. And a customer has only two fields, an SSN, social security number, and a name. And then we have this static customer class, which gives us two functions. We can add customers, and we can approve customers. Again, very basic. I can't even query for a customer list. I can't update a customer. I can't delete a customer. All we can do is add them and approve them. And then we have a loan class, and for that there is a loan DTO with the customer social security number and the amount, and one simple method, make loan. Now, both of these classes are implemented using a little helper called SQL.runSQL. And I don't really need to dig into that. That's some ADO.NET SQL code, which is very simple and is not really relevant to this tutorial. But you can just imagine that what's happening here is we're running a stored procedure to write some data into the SQL database. And you can see all three of these methods are implemented that way. So there's our library. Now, moving up one layer, and we can look back at the diagram, that's this part. Looking up one layer, we can see our loan system web service. So that has a controller called the customer controller, and it has a post method called add, which allows you to add a customer. And it has another post method called approve, which allows you to approve a customer. Similarly, there's a loan controller, which has really a single endpoint called make for making a loan. So that's the entire application. And if you want to see it in action, we can just run our little CLI, which lets us do a few things. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a SQL Server console where we can look. Let's see what is in our customer table and our loan table. You'll see that they are both empty. So now let us simply, through Visual Studio, let's run that loan system CLI. It should bring up a console for us. And it says, welcome to the loan system CLI. 1, to add a customer, 2, to approve a customer, 3, to make a loan, and 4, to exit. So let's press 1, and let's go ahead and add a customer. Enter their social security number. So let's do 111223333. And then let's enter their name. We'll call this person Fred. And now it tells us that the customer has been added. And if we go back to the SQL and we run that, you can see Fred has been added and Fred is not approved. So now we can go back to our CLI. Let's press 2, and we're going to approve Fred. So 111-22-3333 and enter. And now the customer's been approved. And again, if we go and we refresh our queries, you can now see that Fred has been approved. And last, let's issue a loan to Fred. So we'll select 3 to make a loan. We're going to enter the SOC once again. And now let's loan Fred $150.50. And the loan has been made. Going back to our SQL, you can now see we have a loan. So there you go. There's a tour of the application. This is what we're going to use now to start talking about the process of validations.